good crowd.
I'm going to get this started because I'm sure you all are going to have questions, and hopefully we'll have some answers. I don't think there's anybody in here I don't know. This is Nancy Cantor. This is.
She is.
Listen, that's the way I feel sometimes. Who are you today? There are a lot of things going on with the schools, and I know a lot of people have heard, oh my God, there's another one.
Nice to see you today.
I don't stand on formality.
Can't talk to each other.
That's really nothing.
We know.
I appreciate it.
We know the world.
Yeah, this is pretty cool, and I'm very grateful that you came, because this organization has been in existence since 1987. It got formed in the cafeteria at Hohokam, and Darlene was one of the originals, one of the founding members. Patty, there are several others. Now, some of them aren't going to be here tonight because it's May, and we don't have meetings this far into this hot weather, and it's not hot. And you're probably having fun. But there's so much going on with the schools, and neighborhood schools being as important as they have always been to our community, and how they were planned out. And I got thinking about, there might be a lot of questions out there, and he's taping all of this, by the by. Please understand, school board members are not sitting together at any of these tables. You're not gonna have that problem. Thing is, you don't know all the stuff that's going on, and a lot of rumors are out there about school district property being sold, and what's going to happen to it, and why are things taking so long to happen. You know me, those of you who've known me for a long time, schools and kids are just oxygen here. I don't want kids to get the short end of the stick in our public schools. So I'm staying with it. I'm not going away because I'm going to want to have your little grandson who will not stop playing Baby Shark. And we are going to try, and oh, it's terrible. He knows how to use the iPad, and he swipes and gets Baby Shark. Anyway, I've always felt that schools are the strength, kind of like the heart of the neighborhood. And when our schools needed work, is it locked?
Shouldn't be.
When your schools start deteriorating, it's the first sign of your neighborhood being in a tipping point, going downhill. And we passed the bond. We have an opportunity to rebuild schools, refurbish schools, do what's needed to maintain those schools. And that's why I'm going to be here. But I'm also going to be here because we have a situation like we had at Tonawea, not the first time, when the school just sat there. It was empty. It wasn't supposed to be safe. And then somebody wanted to put in a resource center. And there's a lot of questions. I don't want to see questions like that. I'm going to have the names of people here from the district and share them with you. And you can find them online, or we will send them to you, whatever you want. Because you know Ed's pretty good at keeping that website up, so that you too can maintain communications. I'm going to ask everybody to introduce themselves just once, and then I'm going to turn it over to Dennis.
Well, actually, me, then Dennis.
Oh, yeah, okay. You really want to talk? Okay.
Yes, I do.
Let's start here. Marilyn?
Hi, I'm Marilyn Armstrong. I live in the Tonawea neighborhood.
Louise Lamb, I live in Peaceful Valley.
Sonny Kirtley, Navajo, 50 years.
Edmund Richard, live right around the corner from Tonalea.
I'm Deborah Barnhart. We've had that house since I was 4, right around the corner in the alley on Cypress, on Tonawea. Went to Tonawea all the years.
Cool.
I'm Tamsin Slant, and I'm a Tonawea resident, just about a half a block from the old campus, and also a district employee.
I'm Dee Dee Powers. I live right down from the original Tonawea. Me? Oh,
Yeah.
hi, I'm Sandy Kravitz, I'm a governing board member. Thank you all in the Tonalea community for being here.
I'm Barbara Philbrook, also a board member, also a Pima neighborhood member and a Katie graduate, so been around for a little while. Thank you all again for being here.
Hi, I'm Maggie Fulmar, and I live about 3 doors down from Edmond. We're about 2 blocks from the old Tonalea campus.
Patty Badnott, 44-year resident of Scottsdale.
Darlene Peterson, 4 houses from Coronado High School, lived there 60 years.
Wow.
It's Mike Peabody, Hoboken neighborhood, right out the back door here. Daughter at Tonalea and son at Coronado.
I'm Allison Beckham, a board member. Been living in the Scottsdale area for 57 years. And I attended Devon IVAB in Scottsdale High and had many friends that attended Scottsdale High in Coronado. And still good friends today.
All right. I'm Mike DiLorenzo. I'm married into the neighborhood. My wife's family's been in the neighborhood since the 50s. I've been here since 1990. We had, my wife and her family all went through Tonalea and Coronado, and we had 6 of our own children to go over here. Just very invested in the neighborhood and, seeing the school come back. And just put it out there. For us, that's what we like to see. Anyway.
I've been here since 1960.
Okay. And-
Coronado, both my kids went to Coronado, and
Yes, actually that's Dennis Roehler over there. He didn't get a chance to introduce himself, but
I'm Dennis Roehler. I'm the Director of Building Services for Scottsdale Schools, and I commute from Litchfield Park.
Wow. I grew up out there.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Wow.
you need to move.
Jeez.
Okay, Nancy, so I know almost everyone in this room. I remember Mr. DiLorenzo, who's actually interviewed on TV, won the entire debacle about whether or not to close Tonalea, that year and a half of hell. I also remember Miss Marilyn Armstrong and the chant about the school being the heart of our community. Now, in my former life, I worked for IBM. I did cybersecurity and computer forensics. So once I was forced to retire due to a disability, I started raising my 6 children, blended family, and we moved into the Tonalea area in 2007. I actually went to Coronado because my family moved from Maryville to our neighborhood in 1980, and most of my family is still there. Actually, my brother lives cat corner to my house, and my other brother lives right across the street from Tonalea. So when I moved back in with my children, one of the things I told my wife at the time and our kids is that this is an awesome school. It's changed since, my brothers and I have went to those schools. But it's a great investment, and it has heart because it is a community. It's this integral part of the community. Now, I gave Mrs. Cantor, it's 12 pages. It's just abstracts of a bunch of articles where it mentions a few things regarding tipping points. And what those articles mean, it just wrap it up quickly, is that when you lose schools, whether you consolidate them, close them, do whatever magic someone and some board will decide to do, it impacts neighborhoods. And one of the biggest things that in study after study they found is that when you lose the heart of a community, the community unto itself begins to either die or change drastically. For those who stick around, like Mr. DiLorenzo, like Mrs. Armstrong, and Tamsin Slond over here, and many others who couldn't make it tonight, they feel slighted, hurt, and many other feelings. We have a weekly meeting at monthly meeting, the first Fridays, at Maggie Fulmar's driveway. That was one of the first times that I brought up the Tonalea issue once again, because since the school was closed in 2014-ish, our school district, our school board members, our administration, whatever else, I have kept detailed records of meetings and everything else, and it would make the saddest story you could publish about how you destroy a community through inaction. So, yeah. Mr. Roehler is fortunate enough to be a very receptive member of this new administration. Sadly, I can say that within 5 years, I can come to this room, speak to the same people or a new set of people, and there may be very little change. So, I know some of my neighbors have stated this, and Maggie, you can back me up on this. Several of our neighbors actually have asked to pursue legal action against the district for blighting our community. Now, I personally don't feel I should go there just yet, but Mr. Roehler and Dr. Creekar, when he shows up, or whoever else wishes to speak up, will need to do action at this point, because I have seen so many PowerPoints set in so many meetings, listened to so many people at lunches or coffees or anything else, where they spin wonderful tales. But in the end, I'm left with nothing. Because honestly, around the corner from my house, I have fenced in dead weeds, a building that looks like it belongs in Detroit or Beirut, coyotes, and other blight. Now, the greatest insult of all, other than the personal promises or hopes and dreams from everyone, is that banner which says change coming soon. As a parent of 6 children, and it happens at least twice a week, they say, you know, I wish we still had Tonalea. I wish we could see our friends play sports there. My middle daughter, she loves sports. She would love to go there, but it's fenced in weeds in a hazardous area. And Darlene Peterson brought something up in a board meeting, quite a few board meetings ago, where she heard the rumor that Coronado was going to be closed. And you're thinking, what does Tonalea have to do with Coronado? It has everything to do with that, because when you ignore a community, it causes rumors, it causes strife. And one of the biggest things we have heard when neighbors come and talk to me, I can show every board meeting, every document, where there is the plan, the unspoken plan of what to do with schools. What is going to happen to Yavapai and Hohokam, which I have named the Heave-Ho Plan, merging of 2 schools together under the auspices of where they can grow. You know, Yavapai needs to grow to 400 students to become sustainable, is a dream. Because no one ever has the guts to stand up and say, as a district, we need to do the following. Because Tonalea was closed under, let's say, questionable auspices at best. The gentleman, most people know, I will not speak his name, admitted, I have it captured, that he wanted a resource center, one of the options people keep on talking about for Yavapai once the kids move away, was because he wanted a job to retire in. Now, I don't want to hear any more promises of, you know, we're going to have this study. Because one of the things is when the CFO states repeatedly in board meetings, we need to get an M&O passed, otherwise we're going to lose 8 or 9 million a year, or 6.5 until it equals up to 19 million. And the people say, oh no, we got to pass this. But the thing which got forgotten afterwards, hey, you know what? Last year, this school year, we lost 674 kids. I'll just call it 670-ish estimated. You do realize that if we had that many kids enroll right now, that would be an entire elementary school. But those kids walked away. So you're thinking, man, Ed, that's really depressing, and we don't want to be concentrating on sad facts. Yeah, you know what the sadder fact is? What did he say afterwards? We need to plan for next year to lose at least that many. And I can tell you, as being a parent, from a heave-ho process of combining Tonalea and Supai into Tonalea K-8, you lose many more parents. So if someone wants to say it's going to be sports fields one of these days, we may rebuild Tonalea, because as you notice, this Mr. Camera over here recorded when you were there, Mr. Roehler. Chuck Rentala was there, so was Dr. Keekard as the interim principal or superintendent at the time. He made a statement, well, maybe there would be a school there in 2022. Now, the sad fact is, after that meeting, there's a group called Applied Economics, which gave a demographic study, or in other words, saying, okay, you have these type of people living in this zip code, these are the schools. What you're in that zip code, how many kids can we expect to have? Our district is shrinking drastically. the Arizona Republic shows a graph. If I could draw that, it would start at one corner there and be going underneath the floor of our attendance. We're losing kids right and left. So I don't want to hear more plans about, hey, we're going to do this after we have another study, because what Jeff Gadd also said, in 2 years, the cash reserves, where some people are all hot and bothered about, are going to be gone for the district just by the loss of students. So either the district does something now to rebuild faith in the communities they're impacting. Otherwise, people are not going to vote for an MNO, or if they do, the other thing Mr. Gadd stated very clearly is what's going to be the net effect if we pass an MNO? Almost nothing, because you lost too many kids. So, you know, it's such a complex issue and people miss it all the time. And I personally am so tired, and I understand I don't come off as soft and cuddly or the wise old sage like Mrs. Cantor. But I can tell you, as a community member, a homeowner, and as a parent, when Mr. Roehler says something, it needs to be, you know, Mr. Richard, that's a great idea. We're going to present this at the next board meeting. The board's either going to say yes or no, and we're going to get this done. If Mr. Roehler had the ability to do that, that would be awesome. Because not only would Mr. Roehler have that ability to do something for Tonalea, like, hey, look, we have grass and maybe the kids could play on it for school functions, but he can say, you know what, we also have a similar thing for Yavapai. Because what's going to happen if Yavapai doesn't grow? You're going to recreate Tonalea again. Now, if the true plan is to continue closing schools, if you think that recreating more Tonaleas is the best thing ever, you need to leave education. That is destructive. And I'm not blaming Mr. Roehler. I'm blaming other people. And it's not necessarily these board members. Because if you watch the videos, watch them. People have been saying this for years. So I am honestly fed up with people having plans and this and that, because we seriously need action. This is Allison Beckman, or Patty Beckman, sorry, SUSD board president for this year.
Okay, don't talk to one another.
Yeah.
You shouldn't sit together either.
Yes.
Posting is, for the record, posting is a courtesy. It's not necessarily a requirement, but yes, we all acknowledge that we have four board members here and we are not going to discuss our votes
You heard my
or
speech, so
have
that's
this
good.
conversation, so.
Yes. So I think I've said my piece. Ms. Cantor, if you can, in that binder I gave you there's the handouts for the research on the tipping point discussions.
Are they all the same?
Yes, there should be 5 copies there. It has links to it, but behind that are emails and letters from other residents in my neighborhood who wanted to get their voices heard on what they want to see happen.
Those will go to,
Dr. Creeker, or yeah, whoever needs them. But tonight, I do not want the old-fashioned here. I'm going to show a PowerPoint, and you know what? In 5 generations from now, when my great-great-grandchildren are alive and going to school, this may come about. It needs to be, we recognize these facts. These are options we can pursue. This is how we're going to get it done, and then we're going to see how things go. Because I know for myself, and I'm sure for many other people in this room, until we actually hear firm action instead of the, this is something we need to study and have go through in numerous meetings from, isn't effective. Because believe me, not to insult any of the board members here, but if you guys ever watch your meetings and the effectiveness of your communication, it ranges from horrible to slightly horrible to sometimes things get done. What I'm saying is that if you have a structured plan and people work together, recognizing there's a problem, you can get stuff done. But if this simply becomes, hey, look, Ed's the angry community member, there's a few others, they voice their concern, we're going to set it aside, it's not going to work. My school was closed in 2014. It's now 2019. I have Coronado, which no one wants to admit to, as our community member here mentioned, is the smallest high school in existence. If we don't do something to increase enrollment, your board or the next board will be discussing what to do with Coronado. And if you want to see the most negative media attention focus on this district, try to close the high school. And if you guys have no idea what that means, Google the closing of Scottsdale High. So let's not go there. Thank you.
I sit in the bar in this neighborhood and just bring up Scottsdale High and then into the store.
Uh-huh.
Darn, one thing that's bad now in this town is that the city council is putting up too many condos and apartments.
They're not done.
Excuse me, I really would like to hear Mr. Rivers.
Yeah.
And who wants to live and have children in boxes without any yard?
Therein is part of the problem.
Right.
I'm going to turn it over, and I'll talk to you about that too. Dennis, you're on.
Okay, well, first and foremost, I am the Director of Building Services. I have absolutely nothing to do with decisions on closing schools or any decisions that have anything to do outside of building buildings and maintaining buildings. So if there's any questions that have to do with school closures or anything like that, that is not a question you can ask me. Okay, so we're clear on the ground rules there. So Tonalea in its current location, or at 68th Street, there was a conversation, Edmund, Nancy, Dr. Birdwell, Lewis Hartwell, and myself were in almost 3 years ago now, when I first came to the district. And the conversation was that they wanted to get rid of the building that had been there, that was in bad shape, part of why they closed the school. And there was a conversation about what to do with the mosaic. That was like the whole part of the conversation. And my suggestion at the time was to preserve the admin building. If we were planning on demoing the campus, demo the campus, preserve the admin building, and then turn it into a sports facility. Coronado's got a state championship soccer team. All of our schools, all of our communities are always looking for grass to play on. So that plan went forward. We preserved the building. We had to take all the asbestos. That's why it's boarded up. We didn't want to demo the building and leave the asbestos just in that one building. And then things happened. Dr. Birdwell left, Lewis left, new administration, and then another new administration. And then I think another new administration. And I know that Dr. Creekard and Jeff Gadd are working really hard to get the district back on the right path. There isn't always time for every conversation that I would like to have, that they would like to have with me. And I think that the 68th Street property is just kind of status quo right now. Now, we have people talking to us all the time. There was a gentleman that came in that was looking at a private-public agreement that he would build a gym on the property. There was one conversation. The guy never came back. There was a conversation with the new football, the professional football, that was like not the NFL. I think they lasted 8 weeks. So that conversation went away. There was a conversation with the Phoenix Rising. They're not doing so well. They didn't get their MLS bid. That conversation died. So right now, my next conversation, and I don't have all those conversations. Sometimes it's Dr. Creekard, sometimes it's Jeff Gadd. But my next conversation is with the Fiesta Bowl. Right now, they are wanting to get us to let them use our varsity baseball field at Saguaro. We're not real keen on having 300-pound football players playing on baseball fields because it does tear them up pretty bad. So one of those discussions is going to be, hey, we've got this property down the street. What about we work together on that? So that's our next conversation. I haven't had but a single phone call with Bob Whitehouse to say, hey, we need to talk about this before we let you on the Saguaro baseball field. So we just had the landscaper that did turn it to grass, the area where the buildings were, They just went through and they raked rocks again, and they got it all, the sprinklers pulled up, and so now it's flood irrigating every other week. But it's been cold. It hasn't been Bermuda grass growing season yet. So as soon as the weather turns, 60-degree temperature overnight typically gets the ground at the right temperature for Bermuda grass to grow and flourish. So as soon as we see that, then I'm confident that the grass will grow. We have the grounds teams out there, probably not like once a month at this point. We're on a Roundup moratorium right now, district-wide, because we've got some folks that are concerned about Roundup. So that's why there's weeds out there. We're trying some other products, some more organic products, but they kind of work and they kind of don't work. So we're working through that process. So we're trying to at least keep a close eye on the property. The coyotes, I have no answer for the coyotes, except that there's coyotes in Litchfield Park. They're in the golf course.
On Monday night.
We know,
Just so you know.
we know that they're not living there, but they are passing through, and why not? There's probably some gophers on the property, some rabbits, and it's, prime hunting season. Now, as someone that had a grandmother that went straight downhill after 2 coyotes picked up her little dog, I know that that's something that people get concerned about. But it's not our coyote, and it's not living on the property.
I say we leave for it.
Well, someone's gonna try. Yes.
Well, I was just gonna say, 60 years living there, this past year is the first time I've ever heard anything about coyotes.
Yeah.
You hear about that, like newer farther north. This has been an established neighborhood for over 60 years. As far as I know, there's never been, so I don't know, and I'm thinking it's probably coming across from 64th, that gate, the canal over
They're
there.
coming up the canal.
So are they, I don't know if they're coming from
And he probably just saw that nice big hunting ground out there and thought.
Well, yeah, we've got cats that
Because
have been.
we actually have a
yeah.
picture of it just sunning itself by the Ramada, where that yellow game is, just hanging out. Looked like he was enjoying himself, or she was enjoying herself, but.
Well, and I had called, I'm like, I was concerned about the coyote. I'm like, he needs to get out of here because,
He finds his way in, he'll find his way out.
They're amazing.
Well, nobody will do anything unless he's injured. And I'm like, well, okay, what about the people that go after him or that they may attack or not attack
Scottsdale
him?
PD is keeping track of that, particularly an hour before sunrise, an hour after.
Oh, okay.
And in fact, Commander Henny is even doing the patrols on the spot. What is it, Fish and Game, or what's the other one?
Oh, I called a couple places, yeah.
Okay,
Game and
Fish
Fish.
and Game,
Game and
yeah,
Fish. They will typically not, unless it's injured or
Exactly.
rabid.
Right,
We're
rabbit.
way down the
And
list.
it seems like it's perfectly healthy, and it's just making that part of its,
Well, I'm glad it's
part of its
healthy.
hunting ground. So there's not a lot that we can do about it, because I certainly cannot put my guys in harm's way to trap it and try and take it somewhere else. So, and if Game and Fish thinks that it's okay, that it's just passing through, then we're gonna listen to them, because they know a lot about those animals, a lot more than we do,
And
for
that's
sure.
always been a concern. I mean, even Paradise Valley area, they were there before any of these buildings were, and then nobody transplants them somewhere else. That's what people don't, they just build and then they're upset that they have coyotes in their neighborhood. Well, they were there first.
Yep.
There you go.
Can I add something, because I live with the coyotes? Game and Fish will come out to your community, so you can have them come out here and they will educate you on coyotes.
Do's
So,
and don'ts.
the do's, the don'ts, the fact is that they have never had a coyote attack a human except for once, and that's because the human tried to feed it. They grabbed its hand, so biggest thing is not to feed the coyotes.
Well, and they can jump fences,
Well, they
right?
jump fences,
Oh, yes.
but they are
Yeah,
part of
block
our
walls.
environment, and
They can
they
jump
can,
fences.
they'll at least educate you, because they do that in PD, probably once a year, and I've been several times, so.
It's my understanding that it's the food corridor that's really the crux of the problem. We never had coyotes, we never had rabbits. But as they started building up north, next to the Sonoran Desert, and then landscaping, then the rabbits would come in, and then the coyotes would follow that. And I've had coyotes in my neighborhood, and that's the reason.
Yeah, I think they just, as their area gets disturbed, they find someplace else, and it is just a nice big grass area, so.
And they say you can't displace them. You can pick them up and move them, they'll come right back.
Of course.
So, just so you know.
Like a boomerang.
Just like those tearjerker movies where the dog finds its way. Same thing. So I'm not gonna make any promises about what's gonna happen to 68th Street. I can't. I don't have authorization from the superintendent or the governing board to spend money, excessive money. What I would love to see is for that building that's left to be refurbished, put public bathrooms into it, make it a community room that could be rented, and really upgrade the fields. We did a quick stopgap measure because we were getting hammered about the dust and so we took care of it. We got grass there. And Bermuda grass, once you flood irrigate it, it'll grow. It'll grow really, really well. It won't have any problem there. Right now, here we're in May, and we're dealing with 70-degree temperatures. So it's gonna be very difficult this year to put people on that grass. If we get a football team or some soccer clubs out there, soccer's really wrapping up at this point of the year. Tournaments are over in May. We're just risking the chance of it not surviving or just being that much harder to grow next year. So, we have facility use agreements. We have youth soccer programs, youth lacrosse programs. We have all kinds of people asking for space all the time. So as soon as we can get that grass ready to go, we will put people out there. We will have people enjoying those fields again. We had our playground guy out there 2 weeks ago. He tilled up all the sand, got the sand ready to go, ordered all new swing seats and chain so we could put those back together. They plucked out one of the pieces of playground equipment that was out of code and we didn't want anyone playing on that. So it's nearing ready. I think the problem is everybody drives by that corner of 68th and Oak and sees the building. Now I can throw a coat of paint on it and cover up the plywood, but it's still gonna be plywooded and that. So I will have a conversation with Dr. Creekard and Jeff Gadd, talk about what we can do to that building. Juliana Norville she works with DLR Architects. She lives in the neighborhood. We talk often. She would love for her firm to do some work over there and maybe design that. So, there's conversations that are happening. I wish I could say done, but I can't. I just can't. I just don't have the authority, and I got 500 other things that I'm working on as well.
Well, okay. I understand where you're coming from, but from my standpoint, being is that you've been so far the only person who's honest and open about this, well, I guess when pressured a little bit, what does the community have to do to get this to Dr. Creekard or to whoever, saying, look, we passed a bond, people were mentioning one time, the tunnels and we rebuilt this, that, and the other. You can't just say, okay, well, next year this may happen, because that's the same discussion over and over again. What can we do to get something started? It's like, do you need us to sign a petition with so many people? Do we need to have Mrs. Armstrong with other volunteers go to the neighborhood and we'll show up at board meetings or at you guys' doorsteps and saying, what is your next step? I mean, we can't wait we're going to have yet another one phone call. We need action. So what would you suggest?
Well, I can make one promise, and I will talk to Dr. Creekard about it and see if we can bubble it up to be a priority. I don't know. I've talked to each one of our board members over the last 3 years, and none of them are saying, well, no, we're not going to do anything to Tonawea or Old Tonawea. I think there's just a lot of different priorities in the district. And not to say that it's not one of them, but it's not the top one. We just, started the ho-ho-com conversation. And you said the heave-ho, but, we had a parent community meeting yesterday. Mike, would it be unfair in saying that it went pretty well?
Besides the fluff questions the architects asked, it went pretty well.
Yeah.
The community came together and said we want the Ralph Havers style buildings.
Yep.
Period.
So,
You can build new.
there are a lot of priorities, and I understand that the 68th Street property is your priority. And so the best that I can do is go to Dr. Creekard with a plan, and see if we can make it flow.
I understand that. I'll just say, pull out a calendar. It's closed in 2014. It's 2019. So, I mean, it's not like the school got closed last week. We're talking 5 years. So, I mean, eventually, there's always going to be priorities in a school district. So it's like, it's about time someone pays attention to this. Because otherwise, it'd be great. We can get all the neighbors, we can take turns calling the news stations, standing out there, and it's like, hey, look, this is when the coyotes come by. And then if you'd like to repeat your speech or have someone else repeat your speech a million different times, that's awesome, but it's not really great PR, is it? Because I'm telling you, I'm not the only one who's just sick and tired of saying, well, I'll bubble this up and I'll do that. I understand you're handcuffed to your list of priorities, but we need something more concrete. Just like, for the heave-ho plan or the ho-com rebuild, it's like, yep, we did this, it goes here, it goes here, it goes here. This is what I would like to see happen. So it's like, if there's something the community needs to do so we can get that started, that would be awesome. So instead of just relying on you, because like you said, so many administrations have changed. In a year or so, you could be gone, or before that, and we have to go through the same process over and over again. So what do we do to make this sort of formalized? So, yep, these board members know, then the next set of board members know, the next superintendent, the next person in your job, next person in the CFO's job. It's something permanent, not this ephemeral, we had a meeting once and nothing happened. Or we had yet another meeting and nothing happens. You see my point?
I see your point.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, then, this is also be the prime example, is like, okay, so at what point when Tonalea was still Tonalea and kids were still going to school, when was it they said, oh, we can't, this is dangerous now? At what point? So the can of Tonalea was kicked down the road so many years during that time, and now it's become, that it's too late now. Well, now it's like, well, it's already happened, it's over with. So we're just kicking it farther and farther down.
Well, obviously, I came here in July of 2016, so all of that is
Right,
before my
exactly,
tenure.
exactly.
I don't even know how to answer that, except that that big old steamy bag of turd was landed in my lap. And so I've been dealing with it how I can. And I can only say that I will have a conversation with Dr. Creekard and see what I can do. He knows. It's not that he's oblivious to the fact that you guys want that area redone. It really isn't. He was the one that you guys talked to last fall to say, hey, get grass. And he got grass. So he's not oblivious to it. It's just there's so many other things that are happening out there. But I will talk to him and I will bring him a plan so the decision is just a little bit easier for him, and see what we can do to get that thing.
I have not had an opportunity to see what you've written on that paper, but obviously you have been in conversation for over 5 years as a community.
Much longer than that.
But let's go back 10 years. Is there a consensus from the community on what you would like in priorities, if this was 1, 2, 3?
Number one.
Is that on that paper though? That's
No, this is something else.
Okay. So what is that?
Number one, they don't want the property sold. The big story is, number one, they don't want a developer to get at it, put up more high-rise, mass. Number two, the district hopefully, would be able to partner with the community to create something at that site that benefits everybody. Number 3, something that would be safe, something that would help the children, something that would be beneficial to the community. And Dennis and I have talked about this. Well, our playgrounds at our schools, people have access to those playgrounds. But the district doesn't have liability coverage for anything that happens on that spot. My son takes the dogs up and runs them on the playground.
So we have the liability insurance.
Yeah.
What we don't want is unsupervised use, because that creates a higher liability for us. We don't want to increase our risk on that property. It's covered by insurance. But if we just open the gates and let everybody use it, it's still school district property. It's not a city park. City parks operate in a whole different way. And so for us to just open the gates and say, have at it, it's very dangerous. We don't do that to any of our schools. No. All of our schools are locked down. And they're locked down for good reason. People take their dogs on there and don't pick up the waste. Kids are partying on the playground equipment. We find all kinds of things that are not appropriate for school grounds. So we lock them up for very good reason. It's not that we don't want people to use it. It's because we don't want the risk. We don't want to incur that liability of just allowing everybody to use it. Now, if we could come up with a plan that puts a facility back on there where we can rent it to the soccer program, where we can rent it to, if you looked at our facility rental rates, they're super dirt cheap. So all kinds of programs will just die to get on those grounds, to get on the grass. Baseball always wants more space. Football always wants more space. Gridiron football, North Valley or North Scottsdale soccer, they all want the space. And as soon as we open that, I can guarantee you, every night there'll be somebody out there. And then you'll call me and say, I'm tired of the whistles. There's no lighting out there. We don't intend to do lighting. And here's why we don't do lighting. When you put lighting on a grass field, it increases the amount of use, right? So if right now, everybody could get out there from 5 o'clock until 7:30, 8 o'clock before the sun goes down, put lights on it and they can stay out there until 10. During the winter, when the grass is already dormant, then you're gonna put them on there for 6 or 7 hours every night. And it's gonna beat it down to nothing. So from my perspective, trying to maintain fields like that, leave it just as is. Use it from dusk to dawn, that's it, or dawn to dusk. But don't abuse that grass, because then we're gonna get the call. If you go to Mojave Middle School right now, they've got every program under the sun at that field because it's lit. You'd be lucky to find a piece of grass on that field. It just can't handle it. We can't aerate it fast enough. We can't fertilize it fast enough. We can't maintain it. Our crews of grounds guys, 2 of them have 1 guy. That's not a crew, that's 1 guy. So when we're looking at all the decomposed granite, the trees to be trimmed, the bushes to be trimmed, and all of the work that we have to do, 1 guy in 2 crews takes care of 5 schools.
Wow.
So, and it's not because we're not trying, it's because the economy is fantastic and people can get a better job. They don't want to go and do that kind of work. So there's no conspiracy theory, I want, as the building services director, I want that to be a sports facility. I said it in our very first meeting together. I still want that to be the case. I will talk to Dr. Creekard and give him a plan. Okay? Yes.
So if you put swings, you know, you were talking about replacing the equipment and everything, and that's kind of like look but don't touch for the neighborhood. I don't know if there's any possible way that the playground portion of that property could be open to the neighborhood. I don't know how things work between the district and Parks and Recreation, but could there be a collaboration there? Or some sort of partnership where the neighborhood could use the playground facilities and not mess with the grass or, you know, anything like that. So, because if you put, you know, if you put all new equipment in there and the gates stay locked, it's like insult to injury in a way. You know what I'm saying?
So remember what I said, we lock all of our facilities.
Right.
By just putting the playground back in operation, when there's soccer happening, little Johnny has a little brother,
Yeah,
can
they
go
all
play on
get
the
to play
playground.
over there.
Yes, so that's the purpose for getting that, because otherwise we'd have to cordon it all off and no one would be able to use it. So at least while people are using the facility, the little siblings or the older siblings can all use the basketball court.
Yeah, and I'm just saying, open your mind about,
Yep.
is there a way that you can also have the neighborhood make use of that playground portion of that property and enjoy that? And boy, you're sure gonna get a lot of support for whatever else you do on that property when people know that they can take their grandkids up there, their kids up there, or whatever. The other thing is that, just while I'm thinking about it, is the oleanders on the east side of the property there. People are living in there.
Wow.
Oh,
People are living in the oleanders?
Yeah,
That
2
happens
mornings
all the
this
time.
week, I walked my dog and it scared me half to death because the reason that I know is because I was walking by and someone sneezed in the oleanders and I'm like, okay. Yeah, so they may just be living out there for the week or so, but there was 2 times this week I know there were people in those oleanders.
And there's a house right there.
There is a house right
Well,
there.
and we'll go talk to that neighbor, but if it's over our fence line, we can trim it. If it's not, then we have to ask them
I
to trim
think
it.
they did their side.
Okay, so we'll look at
They
it.
did their side, and so the sidewalk and then on the playground area, it's really gotten out of control, and there were 2 people hanging out in there this week, so.
okay, Commander Henning, District 1. I've been on talking to him a lot today. He was over there yesterday himself, looking at the property, seeing where there might be some issues. And I will let him know about people living in the oleanders.
Maybe they were just sleeping in there, I don't
No,
know, I can't
that's
say they
okay.
were living, but they were
That's
in
okay.
the oleanders.
We had that problem in another part
They
of the
shouldn't be
city.
there, yeah.
And it's further south. And whatever they're doing, they shouldn't be there.
Right.
They set fire to the oleanders, which set fire to a fence, which you don't need that.
Yeah.
And they were dragging things like mattresses and coolers and everything else into the oleanders. I'll let Commander Henning know he has to take a really good look at that.
Yeah, but I wanna leave you with the thought, the first thought that I brought up.
And I'll tell you that Dr. Creekard has had a conversation with the mayor about mending whatever relationship hasn't been there between the 2 Scottsdales and seeing how they can work better together, so. Okay, I will duly noted. Yes,
I was just thinking the same stuff. When I was going to school there, the whole time I was there, you know, well, when I was older, like 6th through 8th grade, 7th, 8th grade, we had our own sports teams, and the school always, we did that with the school. But then later I went to school, got a phys ed degree. Well, then at that point, when I went back, I did a little internship there for phys ed. The city had taken over all the sports programs. And then from 80 to 87, I worked for Parks and Rec. And I coached a lot of the sports all around, like Supai, Tonalea, all the different things. And we had the summer programs. And when I was growing up, they had summer recreation, and we lived up there for recreation. We loved parks, you know, in the cafeteria. You know, we'd come home for lunch, and that was it. I mean, you know, it was really great. They have Boys and Girls Club, but I think they probably charge everybody now. But there's always been a good partnership with the city of Scottsdale.
Something
with-
happened in 2008.
Something happened?
Something happened between the school district and the city in 2008, and things kind of just went south.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
I can tell you that we have an active intergovernmental agreement with City of Scottsdale. They have Parks and Recs programs in all of our schools. They have 9 of our fields, school fields, that they do baseball and softball and soccer on. So there's still a relationship. I think Dr. Creekard was just looking to strengthen it, because there hasn't been any new partnerships, any new ideas that have come along lately.
Recreate, which is what recreation is let's recreate what needs to be done.
Yeah.
Because it's not fair, so what you're proposing is for the sports, well, this is gonna be all people that are in, they're paying money to do it. So, but then the people that live in the neighborhood or kids, they'll never be able to go up there, and that's not really
Well,
right.
Dennis, we have access, the community has access, there's gates, small gates that aren't closed, kind of offset.
Billy Buster Gates,
Yes.
especially mine.
Don't worry, I'll be right there with you. Anyway, it's, you can still access it. I'll tell you that you won't be able to drive your Toyota around the campus like somebody used to do, but you'll be able to get in there and play ball and run with the dogs and.
We used to walk home for lunch,
There will be
and it was a
openings
type
in
of a
those
gate,
gates.
on the weekends they would lock it, but, we were, the tether balls were right there, but every day we'd come home for lunch and go back to school, through the alley, up the
We
stairs.
had it at Holcomb. Don't we have gates at Holcomb along Oak Street on the eastern end of that campus where you have the gate, like, I know we had one that was ridiculous because you had to bend down to crawl through it.
So that's for irrigation.
So,
No,
We do it
yours is
Navajo.
different. I think those gates have changed, because it's,
Well, the one that's offset, I mean, you can't just a whole horde of people get in there, go through it at the same time. But I got, my mind's going in 6 different directions right now. I'm building the campus. This is not good.
can I address a couple of your
Yeah,
other
you
questions?
may do that, yes, because I also want you talked briefly about, Hohokam, what's gonna happen with Yavapai after we're done with Hohokam, or have we not touched on that?
That's not my subject.
Okay.
Did you speak about that? Was that spoken about yesterday's meeting?
what's gonna happen after?
No.
Or
With
was there any
Holcomb?
discussion
No.
yesterday at your meeting?
Last
That you
night's
could
meeting?
contribute, right, that you could contribute to what Nancy just asked.
I know you went to Haver Buildings, and that's wonderful. Are we gonna gut them? What are we,
That decision has not been made yet. And that's.
There's a
is-
long,
that's a
long way
ways
to
off.
go.
As for Yavapai, what happens after when Ho-Ho leaves, that wasn't even touched on, it was all about the building and how
Okay.
they come.
okay, that's cool.
That's another huge
Yeah,
conversation.
There's one area that I just, it's not
Well, I don't
my,
blame you.
it's my concern in that I have to maintain the buildings, but that's not my decision. I'm not a decision maker in that arena. So,
Okay,
I
that's,
do want to address, someone had asked charter school, is the charter school gonna buy the property? No. We would be foolish to sell the property to a charter school and let them build and take away more of our kids. Not gonna happen. There's been a developer that's been pecking at the door, asking us about selling the property. The answer has been no. Consistently, no. It doesn't matter if it was Doug Virgil before the interim CFO to Jeff Gadd, the answer's been no, that we're not selling the property. So I don't know any other rumors, there's nothing out there that I'm aware of happening other than a few failed conversations, or not failed, but conversations that didn't go anywhere with different people, private, public, cooperatives or anything like that. I will talk to Dr. Creekard. Yes.
Since you are the facilities guy, The previous principal at Coronado tried doing the accelerated junior high school, and that sort of flopped.
Yep.
Looking at you, board members, or the ones who are here. Okay. In my introductory ramble, speech, declaration, soapbox, etc., I mentioned the issues with Coronado. Okay, it's declining enrollment. Okay, the beta version of Heave Ho was Tonelli and Supai being squished together. That leaves the Coronado complex without what? A middle school. So, to save the complex, not just Ho-Com or Yavapai or Tonellia or Pima, even though they don't like us, etc. If you lose the high school, everything goes away. So I know several people approached me as like, how difficult would it be for you, or who would have to peck on your shoulder to say, hey, look, so-and-so wants to put a junior high school on the Coronado property because it is underutilized. Is that something that you would handle, or is this one of those things we have to have Moses come down from the mountain and have a dozen community meetings, and 3 years later, someone says, yep, we can finally do it because you've long since left somewhere else? I mean, is that something feasible? Could you cordon off a school like Coronado, take a high school and put a junior high school on his property, but separated for safety and every other reason people think of?
So when they talked about the middle school, we looked at that. It was a matter of adding some doors and some corridors to make them one way, doing some things to just kind of segment off. And then obviously they'd have to do some scheduling work to get lunches where the kids aren't together, PE when the kids aren't together in the same gym, but they got 2 gyms and it's a small campus, so they could make it work. So I was told by Dr. Creekard that he had a conversation with you not that long ago about an idea that he had for TKA, and that he wasn't ready to really make it public, but that he has an idea and that he's going to start vetting that idea and working through it and see where it lands.
Because the reason I approached Dr. Creekard is
Moses doesn't need to come.
Are you sure? Okay. Because, before the meeting started, Nancy was talking about the issues with Coronado, and anyone who's lived here long enough knows that when Coronado was rebuilt, it was questionable on how many things were done. You get to inherit many of them, hence the moving of solar panels, for example. But like so many people are asking, these schools are important to us because they're part of us. Eventually, one day, I'll kick the bucket, and maybe some great-grandkids are going to say, look, there's a sports facility there at Tonelli. I say, yeah, do you remember great-grandpa Ed? Yeah, he was a crazy loud guy, but he got that done because he worked with this community, and it's there. Now, it's not fanciful. It's just like, what can we do to see action for these things to happen? Because I understand, things need to bubble up and this, that, and the other. But, eventually we can't have bubbles, because wouldn't it be really sad for Ho-Com finally gets rebuilt in 2 years, and then Jeff Gadd or whoever's in that position says, you know what, guys? I know we're still working through the elementary schools, which are sort of fallen by the wayside. We're trying to get them, increased and whatnot. But now we have high school going under. Then what happens to Ho-Com? It's like, well, then the parents don't want to send their kids to Coronado. So then they flood Saguaro. And then because they don't like Tonelli at K8, they have to flood Mojave. And then Saguaro has to deal with this. But meanwhile, Saguaro at that point, they'll be talking, okay, what about Kiva and everything else? So, if you don't stop the trauma now, you're simply giving yourself a greater injury later. So it needs to be, the whole district's one gigantic mess. There's a million different priorities. But if you don't start with something simple, it's like, hey, look, restore a middle school for a complex. It allows every school, which we're going to keep open there, to feed to it without any sort of blighted perception, because that's one of the things, unfortunately, Tonelli K8 got. It's an asset. People could come and see it works. Hey, Dennis Roehler's awesome. He's working with this company, that company, and et cetera. He's doing the facility stuff, and we've got all these people coming in. The community doesn't want to set fire to the head shed when wherever Dennis is at, because we have weeds and coyotes and everything else. So, can we be proactive and get those discussions, because I understand, yes, Hohokam needs to be rebuilt, and yes, you have a process for it, and yes, maybe in 6 to 7 months, finally, Mike can go sit down at the dinner table saying, you know what, through all the sweat, blood, and tears and cursing, we know at this point construction starts and this is going to happen. But at the same time, someone in my neighborhood can say, you know what, I know, hey, look, we have grass, hey, we have this, and we don't have that blasted banner saying, coming soon. It's actually, there is a plan, there was a meeting, these people mentioned it, board members discussed it, they went to their retreats, they popped balloons, whatever they do, they came back and they approved the plan, and the public can run with it. Because the people just want to know, we're not mushrooms. And like I said, for over 5 years, we're being fed a lot of poo. And, at this point, you either fix the poo feedings and improve the community, or you lose a complex. And that would be a horrible thing for Creek Guard or someone else to try to deal with this. Like, oh no, how do you do with an entire community which loses a high school? Because then I'm sure every board member who's ever thought of running, or people on the board, are going to say, dear Lord, we Googled Scottsdale High. This is going to come up, and dear God, Ed's still alive. I want to go into hiding because I know he's going to find anyone possible to get in our face. So if you can say, yep, I can divide Coronado like this because it's X, Y, Z, whatever it is, you give it to Creek Guard and you say, hey, look, Ed's being a pest, the neighbors want to know stuff. Can we get this stuff going? I understand it's not the top priority like rebuilding a school, but if it works in parallel with it, then people would know, okay, if Yavapai still does exist, they know they can go to a dedicated junior high school, which is going to be a middle school, which is not associated with a blighted K-8, which may or may not exist at that point. I mean, there's so many things in the mix just for our one complex. But I can tell you, if you don't address them, those problems migrate north. And if you think we're a problem, just wait till the people with more money and time start getting into your face.
Did I mention I live in Litchfield Park?
And you wish you were there.
They did have a late night last night, too.
And I absolutely, I agree and understand. I really do. There are like 2/3 of the words that you just spoke, I have zero control over. I have told the administration, and Dr. Creekard told me that he has an idea on what to do with that situation. When he's ready, I'm sure that he will share, if he hasn't already with the governing board, I'm sure that he can make it happen. I told them, everybody knows, if I can make it happen, I'll make it happen. If it's Coronado splitting up some hallways and making that happen, it'll happen. So, again, you can bet that Dr. Creekard and I are gonna have a recap meeting. Send me the video so I can remember what I said. And we will talk. And we will make sure that he knows everything that he missed out on tonight. Okay?
She's been trying to
Go
talk
ahead,
for a
Patty.
while.
Well, this is kind of on a lighter note, so maybe you can relax a little bit. My issue is with Tano's school, and why would they paint it penitentiary gray when a natural brick in the school is delightful?
Which school?
Tano. And then we even have
It's not there anymore.
It's not even remembered.
It's where Navajo is now.
74, 75.
No,
Why was it
that one.
painted Navajo,
one south of Coronado.
It's where Navajo
It's
is
the
right
old
now.
opportunity
Yeah.
camp. It's the old
I
opportunity
don't know,
school.
that was painted before I got here.
I knew you were gonna say that.
Yeah.
What about Kiva? Are you going to repaint that natural brick and redo that school like that?
I am not at all like Joanna Gaines. I do not like to paint brick.
Great.
And I'll give you a perfect example. Is Tavon just got painted, but it was a natural gray brick with red stripes, a different kind of brick that were red. And we just put a clear coat finish on it to protect it from water intrusion. I would prefer to leave it the way the architects intended it. So for us to go in to Hohokam and say, you know, let's just give it a nice coat of paint. Not gonna happen.
Special sort of crazy with
Yes.
that.
Or something, I don't know, I just didn't.
No.
They already
Question
did
over
it
here.
for Tonawea a few times in the past few years. This might sound like backing up to basics, but these neighborhoods that we're speaking of all have their, in case you don't know it, because you live in Litchfield.
Right.
These neighborhoods were designed in square miles, and
Yes.
each one had a school in the middle of it. It was all pedestrian.
Yep.
I'm wondering, now this is secondary to my main point, but I'm wondering if a study has ever been done if those schools were rebuilt in perhaps now a more flexible size. Would there be any need for that, excuse me, damned transportation department that eats dollars like it's going out of style? Could we ditch the buses, the pollution belching buses, and a huge chunk of budget? I know you don't know that, but
Well, I can,
I would like to have an answer to that question. I would like to know why we're busing children past each other to get to a middle school, and now we're going back to the K-8 system anyway. So I've often wondered why this whole exercise in futility ever took place in the first place.
I can answer that for you. I had a talk with the former transportation chief about that. When a child has to cross a major street, it is required
Yes,
that
but
they
they
get bused.
didn't. They didn't on the first square mile neighborhood.
Right, back then, but since
Yeah.
campuses like Apache and Tonto and all that have been
Well,
dissolved,
no,
we
it
expand the
wasn't.
boundaries and impact. I mean, Pima's boundary shoots down to Coronado, Hohokam goes straight down. Tonawea does a weird thing, they're not a square mile, so you have to bus in those areas. You have to bus when they're crossing major areas. If they're within a certain walking distance and not crossing, then they walk.
Right, well, I can understand crossing Hayden Road or something, you know, for the kids, but that was not, that there was really no need for that when they were built. There was Hohokam and Yavapai and even the old Apache school down south.
and that's very much evidenced by the way the parking is at many of these schools.
Right, right.
When you look at Hohokam, when you look at Old Tonawea, there's not a long parent drop-off. If you look at Hopi now, and you look at Pima now, there's over 1,400 linear feet of driveway just to make sure we get all the cars off of the road. So, as we look at Hohokam and what we're gonna do with it, even if we just remodel the buildings, we're gonna have to do something with the parking lot. We're gonna have to increase the parking spaces, we're gonna have to increase the queuing lane. So some portion of the grass will get gobbled up. I don't know, transportation is not my profession. I did run the transportation department in Avondale School District for a little while. And I know that the state reimburses for mileage. So it's not, transportation is not a real drain on the M&O budget. Their belching part, it is sad that 84 passenger bus typically has, a couple dozen kids on it. But I think that's also the culture today, that parents very much want to know that their kids are at school safely. And so that's why we get so many people driving and dropping their kids off. So I think there's, even if we were still in a 1 square mile, there'd still be the conversation about, the safety of child getting from to. And that's not something because when I started building schools in 95, we didn't even consider the kind of traffic that we have now. If you're at Hopi, you could lose count as fast as you can count you can lose count of how many cars
Oh, I know that.
go through that parking lot. They move so fast.
But that's not buses either, I mean, that's
Right,
still the buses.
and they still have 2 buses that
Right,
drop off at that
Right,
school.
with very few children in
Yeah.
it probably, that's a philosophical point, basically, and not your responsibility, I
Yeah.
understand. Now, but something that might be related to your responsibility, is there any kind of a long-term philosophical plan? Because this is going to happen again and again and again, it's already happened. And with, I mean, there is a thought out there that all these condos are gonna produce people that want to live in the area, but no longer want to live in a condo, and that want to start a family. And they may be looking for homes in the area since they may have started out there. Now, I mean, we kind of see this happening, some of the neighborhood regeneration we're seeing happening by reinvestment. Now, is anyone in the district studying these long-term trends and studying places where this kind of thing has occurred? This is the fastest growing area in the United States. And there's lessons to be learned here. It may be too late for our school, but it's going to happen again and again and again. And it's then perhaps in 10, 15 years, we're gonna see that school property on the corner of 68th and Oak is well saved because a school is needed again.
So the district recently, and Edmund had referenced it, the Allied.
Applied economics.
What's that?
Applied economics.
Applied economics.
Yeah.
Did the demographic study, and once upon a time, you could bet your lunch on those demographic studies because there weren't charter schools, there wasn't choice.
Right.
And now they do a really good job, but there's still a lot of unknowns with the choice of charter schools, the choice to go to Pueblo versus Hopi,
Right.
you know, all of those things. So there has been a study, and it actually looked kind of bleak for the district. So
What can be done then? Is there anything that can be done? I mean, I'd like to see.
I just wanted to mention that study was presented at our October 4th meeting, and it's available online at the district
Okay.
website.
Let me add something on the
See the
city level,
presentation.
if I may. Every project that the city brings in as a proposed project in the application stage and the procedure stage has, if it's residential, it goes to the school district in that area and someone in the school district signs off.
Yep.
So find out who that person is.
Yep.
Well, here's the problem.
So the signature, I don't sign it, but I look at it. The signature is, do you have the capacity for this development?
That's correct.
So they say we're building 400 units and we expect there to be 0.75 children out of each unit, or, you know, they usually put a
Well, the
number to
city
it.
doesn't give you the number.
It's the developer
You
does.
develop the number.
No, the
Oh,
developer,
developer
when they do their application, they tell us what they think
expect
that's
for
going to be.
residential.
And so we look at that and say, okay, it's gonna be, you know, maybe 40 kids out of that apartment complex, or whatever the case may be. And then we acknowledge by signature that we can handle those kids. And that was done years back when Phoenix was just exploding and people were building and the school districts weren't prepared to bring on those kids. So they were having to add portables and do things that weren't. So a lot of this development that we're seeing, every application that I've seen recently is a very low number. They're anticipating very low numbers, and probably because it's a condo and it's $500,000. I can't afford a $500,000 house, and I've got 3 kids that are grown.
900 square feet.
So,
1,500.
that's something that we do look at. We do see that. Jeff Gadd signs it, or the CFO signs it, but I do look at it to know what we're gonna be expecting from that condo or that development.
Because those are coming online fast.
Really
Those
fast.
apps come
No, but
in and
this
they're gonna
sounds
be
like we're
building
way
in 2
behind.
years.
Right.
You have no idea how
Way
many are in the
behind.
pipeline.
Nancy, but you have to understand, the district has, that's where you need what you can do there is not come to the district. You need to go to the city of Scottsdale. The district has no control over what is being developed.
Yep.
So please don't.
They won't listen to us.
Well, then you need to vote in your city council members that will
We can't
listen,
get
right?
people to run.
Yeah.
So,
And a
but
mayor
I'm
doesn't
just
have
saying,
any
please
control.
do not look to the district and say, hey, it's your
No,
responsibility.
I
because
totally
it's not.
understand that.
It's really the city
No,
of
we're
Scottsdale.
trying hard to control
I'm
this
sure you
council,
are.
believe me.
But it's,
Well,
this isn't Dennis's area and it's
Yeah.
not actually
Darlene had a
governing board.
question, and then I'm gonna say something.
My daughter graduated from Coronado High School in '78, and in the 23 houses that are on Wilshire Drive, there probably were 30 children.
Yep.
10 years later, and up till now, there are no children. And we're all dying, and people are moving in, but they're becoming bed and breakfasts.
Yes.
And
Right.
then, and then the other people they don't want children. And here they are in a house, and they're not going to have any children. And that's why I feel sorry and understand the problem that the school districts are having because there aren't any children.
Thank you. Thank you for understanding.
Not making babies.
If we could make all the babies, we would, but we can't. And we've all watched our neighborhood. I've lived in my team neighborhood over 20 years, and I'm starting to become one of the oldest people on my street, and it's changed over. When I moved in, I was the youngest. My kids grew up though, but what I see coming in, unfortunately, not a lot of babies. And if families do come in, what I do know is they have 1,000 different choices. And it's not our neighborhood school, unfortunately, all the time. And so we just have to face the reality of a very, very different world we're all in.
Well,
And I appreciate that so much.
What you also about the Airbnbs and that's alarming. I mean, is that up to the
That's
city?
city.
They're the ones that
That's
let
city.
them do
That's
that.
up to the owner.
It's a state
has the
thing.
right to do
It's a
that.
state thing.
Yeah, talking politics, everything.
Nothing.
So-
Let's not go down that
It's a
rabbit
state
hole.
thing.
Is
Well,
there,
I'm just saying, in our neighborhood, in the next 3 to 5 years, it possibly could be all Airbnb.
so is there other school-related conversation?
I have a quick question about
Litchfield
Navajo.
Park?
Is Navajo on the timeline?
Navajo is on the timeline. Actually, as part of our purgatory for past sins, we are going to see the Attorney General's office tomorrow and make sure that they give us the stamp of approval for our process. And then drawings are done, they're in the city for review, they're ready to go.
Because there hasn't
So-
been anybody there on campus for quite a while.
Yeah, actually, the cleanup crew did their final cleanup yesterday, and today they moved off completely. So it's ready for the contractors. All 3 buildings, A, B, and C, are completely clean, gutted out to the walls, ready to go. So we're gonna go to see the AG's office tomorrow and get their stamp of approval on our process, and hopefully we're gonna see a building going real quick.
Just a quick question about Navajo and that. Have you guys put in any construction into there to fix any of the problems that they've had over the past, other than asbestos and stuff like that? Or is that the next stage?
If you remember, I don't know what date it was, February, I went back to the board at one point and asked them to spend some more money on the other things that the trust wasn't going to cover. So we're gonna, in the end, all new air conditioning, all new electrical, flooring, interior paint, cabinets in the classrooms. The front office will be remodeled. It will be a very nice campus. Plumbing.
Yeah.
The galvanized is gone.
We're looking at, aside from that, I never realized it because I'm not the transportation director, but the buses drop off on Camelback. they don't actually have a pullout. So when they drop, they have to open up their stop arm and it backs up traffic in every which direction. Everyone still thinks or thinks for whatever reason that Camelback goes through to the freeway. So there's a lot of speeding down that road. So we've already talked with engineers about doing some adjacent ways work and bringing in a pullout for the buses up against the building on Camelback. Again, a lot of people driving their kids to school, so we're looking at opening up further down the field and creating a queuing lane so that we can get all the traffic off of Camelback. So we get the buses off of Camelback, we get the parents off of Camelback, and everyone will hopefully be happy.
Off your back.
Yeah.
I have one easy question for you, I hope. Yeah, I know. Okay, Tonalea K8.
Yes.
Did anyone ever go as far to get us a crosswalk? Or is that going to be like the solar and maybe the next millennia someone will get to it? Because if you're going to stick kids down there and they don't have a crosswalk because it's the dispute between a city and, you know, one city versus another, and probably the Hatfields and McCoys had something to do with it at some point, you know. But are we ever going to take care of those kids?
So I know that James Dorr, our security chief, who basically deals with all things police and fire, and is working on that. I had a conversation with him probably a month ago, and that he said he was kind of banging his head with the city of Tempe about it. But yes, I know that he's working on it.
Well, then can you as a facilities person work around the city saying, okay, look, trying to get a crosswalk there is not going to work. Since we are a Scottsdale school, can we redo something where instead of the release is there, it's somewhere else, where it's actually in Scottsdale? Think about Tonalea. If you were to, you know, where people drop off their kids, if those kids weren't allowed to cross into Tempe, but were forced to cross into Scottsdale, do you think it'd be easier? Because then it'd be a Scottsdale school in Scottsdale?
That's a great question. I don't know. I know in the city of Phoenix, there's a guy named Donald Cross that is like I think his title is Safe Routes to Schools director. And I know I can reach out to him, but unfortunately we're not in the city of Phoenix. I don't know. I'll have to ask and see, because James has a really good relationship with Phil Kay, I don't want to butcher his name, with the traffic engineering at City of Scottsdale. So we could certainly ask that question.
Because, you know, I would think that'd fall in your wheelhouse where it's like, okay, we do need to spend some of this money because obviously the other city's never going to give in to us. So do we restructure the school just like you are going to do with Navajo for the buses to allow the kids to cross in Scottsdale where we can work with them? It's one of those like no duh things. It's like, I don't want to see Channel 15, 10 and everyone else there when some poor child is splashed against some guy's car, and it's like, well, you know, it happened.
I'm not real familiar with the boundary. Is it Continental that's Tempe and?
The gutter, yeah, once you get past the gutter of the sidewalk, you get into actual asphalt, that's Tempe.
Oh.
So if you actually were to force the kids to cross, you know, where the teachers park and stuff like that, they'd be crossing into Scottsdale, and it'd be easy enough to put a crosswalk there.
Okay, I will talk to James and see where he's at with that.
Tell him that the offer's still good, but if they don't do something in Tempe, I told the mayor this. If they don't do something, one morning you're gonna find me sitting out there in the middle of the street. And I will make sure that traffic stops for the children. It will not be a problem.
Okay.
And I have spoken with Mayor Mitchell about this because the Tempe Chief of Police has been a real, not very cooperative. Doesn't maintain that she has any jurisdiction in that area. Therefore, they don't need to have a police patrol in that area during school times. And I explained to her, it's the northern gutter. The street is yours, the sidewalk is ours, but we have children from Tempe that walk to that school. Now, I know that Salt River Project had a big banner that they put out there. Watch for children. They were very helpful with that. Because they had people coming and going from Para Club that were zooming up and down the street. But they took some steps, that's all they took. And it's been a long while since Tempe has gotten back to gym, so.
Yeah, so, I'm just suggesting that, hey, look, if this is something you're gonna bang your head against a wall, simply tap your shoulder, you write a proposal, these board members or the next say, look, we don't wanna have little Timmy being plastered by some guy's Tesla zipping down to the Para Club. So we re-engineered a school where the opening is on this side, which is within Scottsdale. And, we know that those people are gonna care about it because we don't wanna see little Jimmy on a little sidewalk memorial because he got plastered because there's no crosswalk.
I'll talk to James.
Okay.
He's very cool.
All right, what else?
It's almost 8:30, so you get to go back to Litchfield.
45 minutes drive.
There's gonna be some other information go up on the community council website. We've got a Facebook page, we also have a website. And there are some things that were discussed tonight that I've taken to Dr. Creek already, probably a month or two ago. There were a lot of things wrong in the school district since 2008, and I was very surprised when I got involved, but Mr. Heather said, do it, so we did it. I'm gonna let y'all go because it is 8:30.
Is that sign still there that says coming?
Soon, yes.
Why is that even still there?
Well,
He's a hopeful gentleman.
Oh my God.
I'll drive by and take it down right now.
Went up the city. It's kind of like the politician signs. It's like, get it down already. How many months has it been?
he really fought to get that up there. That was hysterical too.
And if anybody wants to know about Ho Ho Yavapai, I
Thank
can
you.
talk about that. It's not in the building wheel.